Hi, guys. I just want to come to you today and share some things that I've been studying and some things that the Lord has really put on my heart. I've written the last couple of days, probably pages and pages of notes, and I promise I'm not going to give you all of those. I am trying to keep these kind of short and condensed. But there are some things that I do want to share with you today, and some things that the Lord has really, kind of put in my spirit. And the text is going to come today from 1 Samuel chapter 30, verses 1 through 8. Before I get into reading these verses, I do want to tell you that there are some names of places and people in this text of scripture that I am probably going to mispronounce. I'm probably going to mess that up. So I have researched them, I have written them out. I have listened to recordings of how to say them, but for some reason, I cannot get them out the way they should sound, and that could be a lot of that could be my southern accent. Um, I promise I do know how to read. I just the pronunciation of these um, can be hard for me. So if you can pronounce them, great. I can't. So please just bear with me and know that I'm not intentionally trying to mess this up. But I think even if I do mispronounce the name, you can still get the what I'm trying to say across. I'm not saying the names are not important. They are. I'm just saying what I'm trying to get across can come across even if I mispronounce that. So please just bear with me. Pray for me. Um, anyway, let's start at 1 Samuel chapter 30, and we're going to start at verse 1. And it came to pass, when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south, and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag, and burned it with fire. Verse 2. And had taken the women captives that were therein. They slew not any, either great or small, but carried them away, and went on their way. Verse 3. So David and his men came to the city, and behold, it was burnt with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captive. Then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep. And David's two wives were taken captive, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. And David was greatly distressed. This is verse 6. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his son and for his daughters. But David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. And David said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, I pray thee bring me hither the ephod. And Abiathar brought hither the ephod to David. And David inquired at the Lord, saying, Shall I pursue this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered him, Pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. Okay, so that was through verse 8. I read verse 8 and then I stopped. So I want to walk through these verses for a minute. I want us to kind of take a look at them in a different way and kind of put ourselves in that place that David and his men were. But first, I want us to look at David. Up to this point, David and his men and their families, they had not had a place to settle. They were kind of just all over the place. So they had been given this land and they decided to settle in the land of Ziklag. If you looked just a few chapters before this, David was hiding in a cave. David and his men, they were hiding in the cave. Now, David had been told that he was going to be the king, yet he was running around hiding, trying to save his life because Saul was after him. So now he's been told he's going to be king, but yet he's living in caves and he's hiding in holes and he's hiding out in cities. And at one point, he had to let spit fall from his beard so that people wouldn't recognize him. He's having to act like a wild man. David could have been very bitter at God because of that. Because, when you're said that you're going to be king, you think, oh, I'm going to live in this palace and I'm going to have this great life. And David's life was kind of rough. David had some rough things going on in his life. had a man chasing him that was going to kill him. He had to leave his wife. His wife was actually, one of his wives was actually given to somebody else to be their wife. And his best friend, Jonathan, he had to leave him. And, you know, there's a lot going on. And David could have been very upset with God, and he could have allowed that to set up bitterness and hatred toward God. Yet, he didn't. David did all he could to honor God. He had a chance, he had a couple of chances to kill Saul, but he wouldn't do it because he knew that Saul was God's anointed. And he respected God. He honored God so much that he wouldn't do it. In the verses that I just read, David and his men and their families had settled there in Ziklag. David and his men had been away. They had been out in the army, I guess fighting different battles or whatever. But while they were gone, the Amalekites took this time to attack David's home. They thought, oh, David and the men are gone. This will be a great time to go in. It's probably going to be easy because, you know, it's women and kids. So they decided that this was what they were going to do. So they went in, they burned everything, and they took the women and children captive. Now at this point, when David and his men return, they see this. And David and his men were hurt. They were angry. They were brokenhearted. They even began to cry so much. They cried and cried and cried until there was nothing left in them to cry. They had cried all the tears they could cry. And then, after they had cried all the tears and after they were brokenhearted, then they started to get angry. And they started to let their emotions take over. They were hurt and they were angry and they wanted revenge. They wanted somebody to pay the price for what had happened. Now, I want us to take a second here and take a step back because, like I've said, I know a lot of times when we read the Bible, we can start reading and we can look at it as just, oh, this is a story. And I've said this many times, and I probably will continue to say it. These are not just stories. These were real men and women. They lived real lives. But, so I want us to take a minute and not look at this as David and his men, but I want us to look at it from if it was us. How would you feel if you came home from a long trip expecting to see your family? You were expecting your spouse and children to be there to greet you. On your way home, you're excited. And the closer you get, the more excited you get because you're going to get to see your family. You know they're waiting on you. You know those children are going to hear you before you get there, and you know they're going to run out to meet you because that's what kids do. I mean, my son's 11 years old, and he can hear me or his daddy pull up in the driveway, and he's at the door to greet us. That's what kids do. You start planning things in your head. I'm going to hug my spouse. I'm going to hold my children. I'm going to play with my children. I'm going to have a great feast, or in our case, I'm going to have a backyard barbecue. Invite my friends over. Hey, I'm home. Let's celebrate. Let's celebrate that I've came home. Then you pull up to your city and you start to see destruction everywhere. You see houses burned down. You see stores gone. You keep going, hoping and praying that your family and your house is safe. You get to the road you live on, and all you see is charred houses and charred land. You hold out hope that your house and your family are safe. You start moving faster to get there. You get to your house, you get to your driveway, and you see that not only is your house burned down, but your spouse and your children are gone. You have no idea if they're dead or alive. What would you do, and how would you feel? This is the point where David and his men were. The men were heartbroken. They were hurt. They were angry. They had cried all the tears that they could cry. And they wanted somebody to pay for this. They wanted to get revenge somehow. They wanted somebody to blame. They turned their anger toward David. They started saying, if we hadn't been with David, we would have been home to defend our house. David's the one that told us to go. David's the one that told us to go out with the army. David's the one that let us out of here. It's his fault that we went home to protect our home and our children. All of this is David's fault. He should pay. We should stone him. Let's stone David. Now, David could have reacted as these men. He could have acted out of hurt and anger. He could have gone after those people in revenge, but he didn't. Let's look at what David did, because what David did was very important. First, he encouraged himself in the Lord. What does it mean to encourage yourself in the Lord? Well, think of all of the times. I think David took himself and he thought of all of the times that God had been with him, that God had saved him, that God had answered that prayer that he prayed, that God had helped him win the battle, God had helped him kill Goliath. I know in my own life I have prayed some prayers when I was discouraged or when I needed, and I said, God, you did it then. You'll do it now. And I really believe that's the place that David was in. Hey, God, you were with me. I slew Goliath. You were with me. I've got many men with me now. You've answered this prayer. You've answered that prayer. You've heard. Read Psalms. David talks about all the times that God helped him and all the times that God answered his prayer. When he cried into distress, the Lord heard my prayer. There were many times that David called out to God and God answered. So David began to think on those things. David set his attentions and his affections on things above and not things below. And that's what we are supposed to do. When things come, when you don't know a way, when you don't see a way out, when your home is destroyed and your family is destroyed, or you're facing something in your life that you don't know how you're going to get through, what you do is you encourage yourself in the Lord. You start thinking of the things and the prayers that God has answered for you. The times that you have been down to your last little bit of money and you didn't know how you were going to feed your family, and suddenly there was either money or food. You think on the things when you were maybe at death's door and God healed your body. You think on the things when God's protection was upon you. There are many times that we can look back over our lives and we can say, God did that. If it were not for God, I would not be here today. And I can honestly tell you there have been times in my life, maybe that's another video, another story, but if it hadn't been for the hand of God, I would be dead. So that's what you do. That's how you encourage yourself in the Lord. And that's exactly what David did. He started to encourage himself in the Lord. And then he went to prayer. And that's what we have to do. We have to go to prayer and we have to ask God for direction and for leadership. He not only asked God if he could go, if he should go, he asked if he would win and recover all. Now in this, we know that David wanted to go, because the reason we know David wanted to go, let's be honest, we don't pray a prayer unless we want it to come to pass. So David went to prayer asking, can I go? Should I go? He wanted to go, but he was waiting on the leadership of the Lord. He was waiting to see what God would tell him. And I honestly believe if God had said no, he would have stayed. But God said, go. You will recover all and you will not fail. David didn't let his hurt, anger, and emotions take over. He did not react as his men did out of emotion. But before he acted, David sought the Lord. He asked God for direction. God told him to go and that he would win and he would recover all without fail. If we read on down in the chapter, we see David did recover all. David got everything back that they had taken from him. But too many times in our life, we want to jump and we want to react out of emotion. We want to act out of our hurt. We want to act out of our anger. I've done it. I'm guilty of it. I've done it many times in my life. I'm not proud of those moments, but I have done it. We need to be like David. We need to go to prayer first and seek the will of God before we act. In every area of our life, in every situation of our life, instead of just jumping and reacting, we need to still ourselves and ask God for direction. If we do follow his instructions, we will not fail. Let's look at the world around us. A lot of people right now are moving out of anger. They're moving out of emotion. Some are even moving out of hatred. We need to seek God to order our footsteps. We have to learn to be led of God and not of our emotions. You see, David, first of all, David encouraged himself in the Lord. Second, he sought God's face. He sought God's leadership. He sought God's direction. He asked God to order his steps, and that's exactly what we have to do. I hope this word has encouraged you. I hope it blesses you, and I hope it encourages you before you react to stop and think, how would God want me to walk this situation out? Take it to prayer. Take it to prayer. There's a lady that I've heard many times say this. There is a right way to walk out every situation in your life. And that's what I want to tell you today. There's a right way to walk out every situation in your life. No matter what you're facing, no matter what's coming your way, there's a right way to walk it out. And there's an answer if we just call on the name of the Lord. He will hear, He will answer, and He will direct, and He will lead. That's what I want to leave you today. I love you guys, and I hope that this has been a blessing to you.